There have been some explosive claims made at the SALT Global Conference, and in case you don't know who SALT are, they are a global investment platform connecting institutional asset owners with innovative asset managers and technology entrepreneurs. So who are we? SALT is a community of the world's foremost investors, creators and thinkers. Our mission is to drive prosperity and innovation by connecting investment capital with intellectual capital. We achieve our mission by helping institutional investors, from sovereign wealth funds and government pensions to endowments and foundations to family offices and financial advisors, identify and connect with differentiated asset managers. So basically, they were founded back in 2009. And they bring together some of the biggest figureheads in the world and investors and basically put them all in one room to see what they come up with, essentially. Now, one man who spoke recently at the Global SALT Conference, obviously David Grush was meant to be there, but I believe this man stepped in his place. Colonel Karl Nell, aerospace executive, senior military officer and corporate strategist. Right, so benefiting from over 30 years of organizational and technological leadership in top-tier Fortune 500 firms, including Bell Telephone Laboratories, Lockheed Martin Missile and Space, TASC, CACI, and ENSCO. Karl Nell is a seasoned executive, a respected thought leader, dedicated change agent, and accomplished multidisciplinary engineer, comfortable across multiple business models from aerospace high-end development to integrated solutions and advisory services, as consistently successful actualizing board-directed initiatives, driving profitable growth, as achieving operational success within the defense, intelligence, federal, civil, and commercial sectors. Karl has variously served as Vice President and General Manager, leading to the National Security R&D Division, supporting elite classified customers, Deputy Chief of Technology Officer for a $2 billion company, and Distinguishing Fellow of the Congressionally Chartered IT Acquisition Advisory Council. Basically, this man is very much in the know with a hell of a lot of things. And he spoke yesterday at the time of recording, actually, at this SALT conference. And he was quoted as to say, "Zero doubt non-human intelligence has visited Earth," right? Explosive claims. Huge. So we're going to take a look at the claims that were made, see if they have any substance to them, and basically see what we make of it. So let's get into it.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming this evening. I'm glad that we are the final talk of this year's SALT event, and I'm very excited to discuss what I consider to be one of the most consequential questions of our lifetime, which is, are we alone in the universe?
Interesting that they've left this part for last. I wonder if there was a reason for that.
And I'm very lucky to have Karl Nell here joining me for this conversation. Karl, thank you so much for coming. And Anthony and AJ over at SALT, thank you so much for hosting this. So Karl, maybe to begin, can you share a little bit about your background, who you are, and perhaps why people should care what you say?
Sure. Well, thanks, Alex. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. It's a fantastic event, and I'm glad to see a large bunch of folks that stuck it out to the end for this talk. So I was fortunate. I had a 4-year ROTC scholarship to Penn. I graduated with a degree in electrical engineering. The Army sent me overseas to do signal corps engineering projects, so I did a lot of strategic comm projects in Europe. I ended up working in Army Space Command. I commanded a satellite ground station, war trace to the Joint Chiefs. I spent some time at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The Army ultimately sent me to get a master's in mechanical engineering, a master's in strategic studies, graduate work in computer science. I was on track to stay in, but I decided that I wanted to pursue more of a technical career. So I got out and ended up working at Bell Labs, which was a fantastic place. Unfortunately, I was there during the trivestiture that folks may be familiar with, where the company got split up. I left Bell Labs and ended up working in Lockheed Missiles and Space. I worked at Northrop Grumman. I've ran strategic technology programs in the defense industry, worked for a lot of the three-letter agencies, ultimately was a deputy chief of staff or deputy CTO for a $2 billion company. I was a vice president general manager of a Northern Virginia-based R&D firm. I stayed in the military, in the reserve. I commanded at every grade level through brigade. I was fortunate to stand up the Army's newest expeditionary MI brigade. I was the deputy chief of staff for a combatant command. Ultimately, this experience sort of combined to give me the opportunity to come in and advise Army Futures Command, the largest reorganization in the Army Reserve since really 1973, on how the Army could be more effective. And my last assignment was involved with the UAP task force, which maybe is the most apropos for this discussion.
So basically, this man is a huge overachiever that has basically been through it all. So a lot of credibility to come out of this man's mouth, hopefully.
And so, Karl, here's the million-dollar question. Do you believe that a higher form of non-human intelligence has visited this planet?
Right. So non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity. This interaction is not new, and it's been ongoing. And there are unelected people in the government that are aware of that.
Bloody hell, I wasn't expecting that kind of forward answer. Were you? Like, this man didn't even say, I think that this is the case, I think that this might happen, this might be what... No, he went straight in, he went straight for the jugular. He was like, yeah, this is going on, this has been going on for years. There's non-elected people in the government that are absolutely aware of this, and, it's been going on for ages. So blasé. For some reason, I thought he was going to beat around the bush with it.
And so, Karl, that is quite a bold statement.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, and I'm curious, how confident are you that that is true?
There's zero doubt.
And Karl...
Wait, hang on. So he's made that initial part as a statement, but then to say there's zero doubt almost makes it sound like he's not actually aware that this is going on, but he's just incredibly confident that that is the case. I don't know. I'm conflicted with that answer. I feel like the initial answer was like, yeah, I'm completely, this is what a stupid question. Everyone's aware. I'm aware of this. This is absolutely what's going on. And then he's asked about like, how certain are you that that is the case? And he's like, yeah, there's no doubt. Like, but if you would, if I knew that that was going on, my answer would be like, oh no, I know that's going on. Like, there's no doubt about it because I know that that's happening. It's a very conflicted answer. I'm not sure what I feel about that.
Karl, what evidence have you seen? What was the moment where you developed this level of conviction? Because what you're saying is extremely consequential and very important. And I know that a lot of people here, even perhaps, may not believe that statement.
Right. Well, probably a better way to ask that is how can the folks in the audience come to a common understanding of what this phenomenon is? And so there's sort of two tracks here. One is from first principles, and another is actually from the data. So let's take a look at the data. So we can look at some folks that have very high level access to information, like Paul Hellyer, who is the defense chief for Canada, has come out and said the same thing. We can look at Ham Eshed, the head of Israel's, or former head of Israel's Space Force, has said the same thing. Chris Mellon, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Intel, SAPCO, has essentially said the same thing. Lou Elizondo has said the same thing. David Grush has said the same thing. David Grush cleared for presidentially level material. So you're looking at people that are in a position to know this, and they're telling you the same thing. You could take a look at the Gang of Eight in the Senate and in Congress. So there's two members of the Gang of Eight, Marco Rubio and Senator Chuck Schumer, that signed up to the UAP disclosure amendment last year that basically said they're not being told the truth and we need to push forward on that. So that's sort of an overview of some of the data. From a first principles standpoint, what's so unusual about this realization? There's billions of stars in the galaxy. life here evolved in 500 million years, which is basically a blink of an eye. We've found planets around every star that we've looked at. It's likely that the universe is full of life. If you look at the SETI program in particular, the SETI program has all the same assumptions that you would accept and probably make with respect to this topic, except that they believe that non-human intelligence is transmitting signals here. But at the same time, like, we're not transmitting signals. SETI doesn't transmit signals, and the only signals that are actually broadcast of high enough power into space for somebody to pick up come from broadcast television and ballistic missile early warning systems, which you could argue our technology is moving away from. We're going to satellite, we're going to fiber. Broadcast TV is a thing of the past. And if you get to some state where society is stable, maybe we don't need ballistic missile early warning systems. So the other guy is probably not going to transmit. But what the other guy may do is come here if that's possible to do. And there's physics models that suggest that that may be possible.
I'm struggling to know whether this guy is stating this as a fact or if he's stating this as a very large likely possibility. Like, I don't know where he stands right now. Like, I'm struggling to, because like he's hopping from I absolutely know this to this is very plausible to this is definite to this is very likely. Like, where does he sit? I'm confused.
And Karl, I mean, what you're saying is extremely consequential, and you've referenced other people that have said the same thing that also have similar credibility. There's similar reasons for why we should believe many of these folks, yet the government itself has not formally disclosed. They've been very reluctant to do that. Why? Why do you think that is?
Good question.
So there's 6 basic reasons, and this, again, you could draw this out from first principles. There's a national security reason. There's the lack of a plan. There's the potential for societal disruption.
Yeah.
There's the possibility that there's some non-public agreement. There's the potential for misdeeds and the desire to cover up misdeeds.
Yeah.
And there's just the basic organizational intransigence and lack of priority that might be associated with the topic. So all these things are factors. The issue is that really the national security issue subsumes all the others. And so there's an opportunity maybe to contract the national security issue, similarly to what was done with nuclear weapons and nuclear energy, such that nuclear energy is not necessarily classified and is available to the public. But lack of a plan and the potential for societal disruption are key ingredients that would prevent any responsible leader from coming forward with information that they don't have the means to address in a responsible way. It would be irresponsible to do that.
Yeah, and actually that's why, or allegedly why, the governments are going for what they're calling a soft disclosure, where they leak information in drips and drabs, so that it's like the public become desensitized to the information. So then when it's all out there, it's like people don't really care about it. It's kind of like, oh, the government have said that now there's UFOs, and then that should be the response. Not like, I mean, it won't be that. Like, of course, that will always be a huge monumental moment, but I don't think we'll ever get that far, to be fair.
Okay, so what you're saying is that you have absolute conviction that a higher form of non-human intelligence has visited this planet, that there are factions within our own government that know about this, yet we still don't have a plan, and they may represent a security issue. This may pose a threat to humans, yet you still believe that we should disclose. Is that right?
Correct, right. So there's really 3 reasons that trump all those others. And those others are basically valid, like I said. So the first issue is the moral right. The government exists for and by the people. And so the nature of reality is fundamentally not government information. People have a right to know the world in which we live, and the pursuit of happiness requires that knowledge. So that's sort of the first kind of overarching philosophical foundation for this. But, as a corollary to that, if there are misdeeds that were done, then they need to be remediated. If there's lack of proper oversight, which is suggested by some of the whistleblowers, that needs to be remediated. So the first issue is the moral issue. The second issue is being in a reactive mode is never preferable to being in a proactive mode. So reactive mode is basically trying to prevent disclosure. But failing that, you might get a situation where you have catastrophic disclosure that creates all the problems that you were trying to prevent. So a more balanced middle path of controlled disclosure is the best way to do this, which is, again, an argument for some amount of disclosure. And the third part is simply societal advance and global competitiveness. More brain trust needs to be brought into this topic in order to make progress and to improve society. And so all three of those things together trump the 6 other reasons for non-disclosure.
Interesting.
And what do you think happens if we don't disclose? I know you mentioned this idea of catastrophic disclosure. Maybe disclosure may be forced upon us. How do you think about that?
So the situation is usually thought of as a binary state. It's like an all or nothing. And people have sort of argued this. But anybody paying attention realizes the government has already indicated that unidentified anomalous phenomena are real, they're not ours, and they're not our adversaries. The Pentagon has said that. Like, for people that are paying attention, like, that shoe already dropped. So for a lot of people, they think that the second shoe to drop is this is non-human intelligence, and maybe the conversation stops there. Like, the president comes out and says, there's non-human intelligence. The truth is that will precipitate this crescendo of other questions that maybe the government's not ready to answer, that will court, if not precipitate, potential negative ramification for society. And so,
well, that's always going to be the way. Like, if they turn around and the president was to turn around tomorrow and say, for example, there are aliens and non-human intelligence, and then just walked away from the podium, there would be an enormous amount of question and uproar. It'd be like, how long have we known for? What are they? Where do they come from? What's their intentions? How long has this been going on? Are they friendly? So many questions that actually, to be fair, if you've got the answers to, like, aliens being here, you should just be like, aliens are here, they're from X, Y, and Z. This is their intention. We've known about them since the 1700s and blah, blah, blah. Like, but then it would also be like, but who else knew about it? Who else was lying all of the time? It would open a can of worms, but I don't know. It needs to happen.
So as an example of this, I would actually point to something from the ancient past, the Bronze Age collapse. So Eric Klein, Princeton University, 2015, wrote a very interesting book called 1177 BC, the year that civilization failed. And so this is well known to current scholarship. Within a single lifetime, all of the very effective ancient civilizations of the Bronze Age failed due to a confluence of reasons that are not necessarily fully understood today. So we're talking about Egypt, the Hittite Empire, the Minoan Empire, the Manassean Empire, the Babylonian Empire. All these civilizations failed, never to return, other than, let's say, Egypt. And so these were highly sophisticated civilizations with highly developed infrastructures, highly developed administrative states. They were globalist, in a sense, very similar to today. In terms of the known world, the known Near East, they were economically interdependent. They had both diplomatic ties and commerce ties. And yet these civilizations failed in a single lifetime because of stressors that these civilizations collectively could not address within the time frame. And so if we look at our society today, one might argue that it's similarly fractured, similarly under economic stress, similarly under
Amen.
Cultural stress as well, fractured and fragile diplomatic situation. It mirrors very much this scenario.
Yeah.
And so for a responsible decision maker, that is certainly a factor.
And
so basically, we don't know about aliens yet because the government's fucked up the economy so bad that we're all crippled financially. So it's like, well, let's just put the alien disclosure on the back burner and try and deal with the current issues that we've caused. Because, it's just chaos at the minute. The world's in chaos. So I guess that makes sense.
And so I guess when you say that, are you implying that perhaps we as a society may not be ready for disclosure? Or are you saying that we may not be able to defend ourselves against this other force?
So there's sort of different viewpoints on, whether people are ready to, deal with this phenomenon. And, popular culture is kind of infused with this stuff. Roswell became a meme a long time ago. We got programs on ancient aliens, Skinwalker Ranch, all this stuff. I guess I would draw an analogy, though, for people believe in a certain faith tradition, whatever that faith tradition is, and hold to that and subscribe to that in a very serious and devout way, and sort of pose the question, even for folks of that ilk, and I would count myself as one, if you're confronted with the reality of your religious belief system, like the reality of the metaphysical, an angel, a messenger from God, what have you, that's going to be a sea state change in your way of dealing with reality, right? Even though you already believe it, right? So it's one thing to believe and it's another to know. And I think in this context, this phenomena has the potential for an analogous effect both on the individual and on society.
Yeah.
Wow. Who knew religion would play such a big part on whether disclosure would happen or not? I mean, I kind of had an idea that would be, of course, the case, because to a degree, aliens, beings, and things that aren't human, with intelligence, like to a degree that humans have, would challenge some religious beliefs, and that would, it could cause disruption around the world. So that's a really interesting point that I never really paid too much mind to.
But do you think that the phenomena, this non-human form of intelligence, represents a threat to humanity?
So this is a good question too, and some of the other folks have sort of framed things in that light, and I guess I would suggest that if the universe is governed by conservation laws, and it's probably reasonable to assume the laws of nature that we understand apply everywhere. We may have incomplete understanding, undoubtedly we do, of these laws, but they're sort of homogeneous and they apply throughout the universe. And so those laws are governed by conservation rules. There's conserved quantities. And so this reality really forces a Darwinian-type competition in order to survive. And so it's reasonable to assume any other civilization that's evolved has come up through the same Darwinian evolutionary process. So I think it's naive to expect complete altruism until and unless you get to a state of post-scarcity, where you essentially have no physical needs that we're kind of encumbered with in this universe. And so in some sense, it's the economics of the future that are going to determine whether there's cooperation, competition.
I'm going to stop the video there. If you want to check out the full thing, go over to the Salt YouTube channel. But like I said, I don't know whether this guy's coming or going at times. Like, he's confident that this is the case, but then he's like dubious and he's like speculative. So it makes me wonder. But if what he's saying is true, it makes so much sense with regards to disclosure, but also so much sense to regards with what whistleblowers are saying and what is actually here. What do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down below. And while you're down there, subscribe. Peace.